Let's talk about something really incredible that's happening at the intersection of biology and computer science. It's a revolution that promises to make medicine way smarter, faster, and a lot more personal. But to really get why this is such a big deal, we first have to understand the massive problem we're all trying to solve. And it all starts with a pretty staggering question. With all of our medical breakthroughs, why is it that when a promising new drug finally gets to clinical trials, it almost always fails?
Yeah, you heard that right. 90%. That is just an immense amount of time, money, and frankly, hope that just hits a dead end. So, what makes this high stakes game of drug development so unbelievably difficult?
Well, the answer lies in the fundamental challenge of medicine itself. You see, we're not playing some simple game of chance here. We're placing a huge, high stakes bet against a system of staggering complexity. And it's not for a lack of effort, I promise you. The real reason is that human biology is one of the most complex systems we have ever tried to wrap our heads around. I mean, a single cell has thousands of moving parts. A disease can involve countless different molecular players. It's not just like finding a needle in a haystack. It's more like trying to find a specific key for a specific lock in a pitch black room that's filled with millions of other locks. So, how do you turn the lights on in that room? Well, you build a map. Or in this case, you build a simulator.
This brings us to a mouthful of a term, quantitative systems pharmacology, or QSP for short. But forget the fancy name for a second. The best way to think about it is like a flight simulator for medicine. You wouldn't let a pilot fly a brand new multi-billion-dollar jet without spending hundreds of hours in a simulator, right? Of course not. Well, QSP aims to build that exact same kind of simulator, but for the human body. We're creating a virtual patient where we can test fly a new drug and see what happens, long before it ever gets near a real person.
And the philosophy behind all of this is actually super simple and powerful. It's not about replacing doctors or scientists. It's about giving them way better tools. The goal is to use data to build really good models, which in turn lead to much better, much more informed decisions. So how in the world do you build a virtual human? Well, it's basically a three-step process. First, you have to gather all the blueprints. That means every single piece of clinical and experimental data you can get your hands on about a disease. Then comes the construction phase. You use all that data to build a complex mathematical model of the biological system. But the most critical step, by far, is validation. You test the simulator by running thousands, even millions of what-if scenarios, constantly checking if its predictions actually line up with what we know happens in the real world. Okay, that all sounds great in theory, but let's see how this works in practice. Let's solve a very real puzzle for patients with sickle cell disease. All right, imagine you're a doctor. You have a young patient with sickle cell disease on a really crucial medication, but their health markers just aren't improving. You're immediately faced with two big possibilities. Is it possibility A, their body is just not responding to this drug for some biological reason? Or is it possibility B, the patient is having a hard time taking their medicine every single day as prescribed? And this is the critical point. How can you possibly know the truth? Pharmacy records might show that a prescription was filled, but that doesn't tell you if the pills were actually taken. You're basically trying to solve a puzzle, but a key piece of information is totally missing. And this is exactly where a QSP model can step in and act like a medical detective. So here's how the detective goes to work. First, it analyzes all the clues. In this case, months of the patient's actual blood test results. Then it runs a simulation of a perfect patient, someone who takes every single dose right on time. When the real patient's data doesn't match up with the perfect simulation, the model asks, okay, what pattern of missed doses could explain this specific gap? It essentially works backward to reconstruct the most probable story of what really happened. And this whole process led to this really powerful insight they called drug forgiveness. The model showed that just sporadically missing a single dose here and there wasn't nearly as harmful as missing several days in a row, what some people call a drug holiday. Now, this isn't just data. This is a vital tool for doctors to counsel their patients. It allows them to say, hey, consistency is really important, but a single mistake isn't a catastrophe. Just get back on track. Okay, now let's scale up the complexity a bit. What if your opponent isn't just a chronic disease, but an intelligent, fast-evolving adversary, like a virus? You see, viruses like hepatitis C are absolute masters of escape. The second you hit them with a drug, they start mutating, trying to find a way to resist it. But the real challenge is that these resistant versions often exist in tiny, tiny amounts, way too low for our standard tests to even pick up. They're like a hidden guerrilla force, just waiting for our treatment to let up so they can emerge and take over. So, how do you fight an enemy you can't even see? You have to think like a military strategist. You don't just fight the viral army that's right in front of you. You have to anticipate and map out every single escape route it could possibly take. And that's exactly what researchers set out to do with their QSP model. Their solution was this ingenious hybrid model that works on two levels. First, inside an infected cell, they basically unleashed chaos. They used something called a stochastic model to simulate the random nature of evolution, generating every possible mutation the virus could dream up. Then, they fed all that chaos into a more orderly, deterministic model. This second part took all those potential new viral strains and calculated, based on the known rules of biology, how each one would grow, spread, and compete throughout the body. It's an incredible way of simulating both random chance and predictable outcomes all at the same time. Now, these are just two examples, but they point toward a much bigger, much brighter future for medicine. I mean, the payoff from this approach is enormous. We're talking about moving away from one-size-fits-all medicine to truly personalized dosing. We can design smarter clinical trials that are way more likely to succeed. We can even create treatments that are designed to be one step ahead of evolving diseases. Ultimately, it's about understanding the root of an illness, not just chasing its symptoms. And these simulators, they're just the beginning. They're laying the groundwork for what many people believe is the ultimate goal of personalized medicine, the creation of a digital twin, a highly detailed computational model of you that doctors can use to test treatments and predict outcomes before they ever try them on your actual body. So I'll just leave you with this thought. What if, in the very near future, your next prescription wasn't a best guess, but a certainty? What if your doctor could test a dozen different treatments, all on your virtual self, to find the perfect one for the real you? That is the incredible promise of model-informed medicine.